Tomorrow, right here in Washington, D.C., thousands of students from all across the country, including survivors from last month's deadly high school shooting in Parkland, Florida, will march on Washington. The March for Our Lives will demand lawmakers and President Trump do something to stop gun violence and mass shootings on school grounds. Looking ahead to the march, I wanted to hear from Americans who have grieved and survived and are pushing for change here in D.C. And last night, I listened to 11 people, thanks to the help of Everytown for Gun Safety, ranging from a woman who lost her father in Columbine 20 years ago to 2 students from Parkland, Florida, who lost friends and teachers just last month. I heard from a high schooler who lost her father to gun suicide and a librarian who shielded children at Sandy Hook. And what I walked away with was this. Despite their irreplaceable losses, they have new hope thanks to powerful young voices at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And here is part 1 of our conversation.
My father was killed at Columbine High School in 1999, and for the past 19 years, I've seen a lot of people really working to make change, and I believe that Parkland was the tipping point.
We are sitting amongst people with shootings that span from Columbine 20 years back to what happened to you all a couple of weeks ago, and that they're saying now, because of what happened at your school, they believe change is possible. What does that feel like?
I just think, considering our student body and how open they've been of their experience and how they've been grieving, we've just been very out there, and we're kind of just like, this is enough.
There's so much reason for hope, that we're seeing young people whose lives were touched by this tragedy, and I think that's why millions of Americans are going to be out on Saturday marching and demanding change in Washington.
They're just asking for us to help keep them safe. They're not even, most of them, voting age yet, so they can't politicize this issue.
This is a generation of young Americans that have grown up with lockdown drills. And when they see this happen at Parkland, it's personal to them. Doing nothing doesn't work. And I think people are tired of this.
When you get that breaking news alert on your phone, that it has happened again, what does that feel like for you?
So I've been getting that news for almost 2 decades now, and the march on Saturday will mark the 6,913th day that I've marched without my dad. And every time there's this little flash of hope, and then nothing. When the students from Parkland, when I saw them on TV, I started, like, it's embarrassing. I was jumping around my house, clapping my hands, because people are listening. People are hearing us, and we feel like we've been yelling from the bottom of a barrel for almost 2 decades. And you know what? The politicians, they can march with us or watch us walk away.
To hear her believe in you all and hope in this plight 20 years in the making, how does that sit with you?
I mean, I think a lot of people are confused as to why you're just hearing us now, and that's because it took this event to happen at our school for you to hear us. We've talked about it in our school before. We've debated for gun control and what we think would actually make change, and now that there's this national presence of media that can get our message out, it's getting out. We're not going to stop. When Columbine happened, social media wasn't around. When Sandy Hook happened, it was elementary kids. Like, they don't have Instagram, Twitter. So I think when they realized it was teenagers, and teenagers are, like, on social media all the time, I think it gave us the platform.
When we think about gun violence, I believe it's not until we're able to get into the hearts of our legislators and our congressmen, until we're actually able to get into their hearts and turn that, will they be able to really understand the plight and the grief and the pain that anybody that has suffered gun violence have to go through. And I miss having my family intact because we're no longer together.
We really are relying on our adults, we're relying on our older generations so that they can vote for lawmakers who support common sense gun laws.
You have decided to be the change. You are running for Congress in Georgia's 6th district. What pushed you over?
It's been growing and festering inside of me for a very, very long time. Of course, it started with Jordan. It just came to a culmination with Parkland. There's a shift and there's a cultural change that we've never seen before. These are our babies. If we as adults don't even stand up to our own legislators, and these children are standing up, and I'll do whatever I have to do to help them thrive and be who they're supposed to be.
The best way that we've thought to describe it is that it's felt like it's been a whole year, but also that it's just been yesterday. A couple of them were in my grade, so I've gone to school with them since I've been little, and kind of losing them has been really hard. I know Carmen was in a lot of my classes, and she was just so smart, and she understood everything. Mr. Vice, Coach Vice, he would wave at us every morning when we walked into school. And then Alyssa is my little sister's friend, and it's kind of hard talking about it. Because she was 14, and she had a life ahead of her.
You will hear much more of our conversation next hour. You can also find out if you are interested in where marches are happening near you. Text MARCH to 64433. Join CNN tomorrow for complete live coverage of March across America. CNN's coverage begins at 6 a.m. Eastern. I'll be hosting special coverage tomorrow from 2 to 4 p.m. We'll be right back. Powerful young voices in Parkland, Florida. Here is the second part of our conversation. The president has gone back and forth on some of these gun control issues, times saying things that could be encouraging to this crowd, at times perhaps not.
The fact that President Trump waffled on what he said he was going to do in support in terms of stronger gun measures, he waffled within a number of days simply because the NRA gun lobby and the leadership said, I'm believing, they said, we put you in office, we spent this amount of time and money and resource, and we expect you to be beholden to us.
I think that he said those things and that he meant them in the moment, but then when the politicians get a hold of him, he goes their direction. He's going whatever direction they pull him. And, you know, in that moment, we all felt a sense of hope and a little bit of shock and awe at the same time.
When he said maybe raising the age limit?
You know,
He sounded like he meant it.
He sounded like he meant it.
He likes people to like what he's saying, but we need to like what he's doing.
I was very excited. I thought, he's going to do something. He is going to make a change, and there's plenty of people who doubt that he's going to be able to do something like that. And I was very hopeful. I was like, here's his chance. And then I guess the NRA got to him.
My classmates and I have been speaking out. A lot of people are taking it as, well, where were you when Obama was in office? When were you when this was happening in the past? I was 10, 11, I'm sorry. And then it's also, he's president now, he holds the power now, he holds the power to change our future now, and he's not doing anything.
How many of you think that the country should consider arming teachers? Arming teachers.
That's the craziest thing.
Crazy.
Why is it crazy, Sharon? It's crazy. I mean, think about, you have to give your focus on teaching and forming these young minds. Where are you going to try to get your brains to function if something happens in your class? Are you going to have your gun on your hip? Is the gun going to be locked up in a closet? So the whole picture of that just seems ludicrous to me.
On the day of the shooting at Sandy Hook School, it would be completely normal for a kindergartner to climb up and try and sit on my lap. If I have a gun on my hip, I'm assuming that's how that would work, and I have a kindergartner climbing up on my lap while I'm reading a story, I can't imagine, first of all, that that would be the safest situation. And in order for it to be an effective weapon, I'm imagining it has to be loaded. And so I have a loaded weapon on my hip, and I've got kindergartners sitting around me.
You know, as a parent who lost her 14-year-old to a preventable gun incident, I think that for the most part, you have, if you arm teachers, then you run the risk of where they're going to store that gun. If it get in the hands of the wrong person, maybe it's a student that's having a bad day, that's getting something that's going on, and they find that gun, they stumble across it some kind of way. You're making and you're creating an environment that is truly unsafe. More guns is definitely not the solution.
What is the solution? Army, school resource officers, having more around, not just one? I mean,
in some of the rural areas, there is some concern. I was at a first responder convention and they were talking about the rural areas where if they call the police, it's going to be 20 minutes before somebody can respond. And so they talked about who would be the most appropriate person on campus, but they're not talking about arming the librarians.
you guys are in high school. Jump in. What are you thinking?
I've had a teacher that didn't even know how to turn on their computer. Just the idea of how they've all of a sudden have this idea that they're going to be able to arm so many teachers in every single school, and they've gotten money for this. Schools have been underfunded for way too long. Teachers are underpaid, overworked. Someone saying that arming my teacher is going to make me feel safe is, they're not asking us.
It's very upsetting though that can get passed, that you can have someone on campus with a gun when all these other issues that make so much more sense have not been passed in legislation. I don't understand. I'm sad that they can say, oh yes, we'll solve that with more guns. Like, how can that happen in the United States of America?
When we were hiding behind the trailer during the shooting in Las Vegas, there were people around who were saying, you know, I wish I had my gun, and they'd been drinking all day. He wasn't in the festival, so these people would have had guns on them while also having been drinking and going into the crowd with no information about where the shooter was.
It was an incredible response from first responders to Sandy Hook School, and it still took them hours to exactly figure out how many shooters were there, was there still someone that they were looking for. So if you imagine that situation and you imagine a teacher running down the hall with a gun, my guess is the teacher would be shot by the law enforcement because they wouldn't have any way to know that that was a good guy with a gun.
You never know how you're going to react when you're in a situation and you're scared. When fear takes over, you don't know what your response would be. We can be trained all day long, but that doesn't mean things doesn't happen or doesn't go another way, and who's going to be there to guide that way when something goes wrong.
Who thinks there's a chance, though, that the president may jump in and do something in your favor? Wow, no one. Although they emphasize they do feel very hopeful, and they are marching this weekend, and if you want to march, you can find out where marches are happening near you. Text MARCH to 64433, and please come back tomorrow. CNN will be live much of the day for this March for Our Lives. We'll be hosting here from Washington from 2 to 4 Eastern, so we'll see you tomorrow.